Welcome to the final experiments. The final experiments are a preponderance of evidence against flat Earth, and the final experiments all confirm the globe. These experiments were all conducted in December of 2024 when 4 flat earthers and 4 globers went on a journey to Antarctica with me, Will Duffy. We spent time in Punta Arenas, Chile, which is at the southern tip of South America, before flying to Antarctica. This entire trip allowed us to conduct historic experiments and collect data firsthand from an area of the world that few people will ever have the opportunity to visit and do this themselves. Prior to my announcement of the final experiment in early 2024, a vast majority of flat earthers, with very few exceptions, promoted the Gleason's map of the world, which is an azimuthal equidistant projection. This map had the North Pole at the center and pushed the South to the outer perimeter of the known world. This made Antarctica an ice wall perimeter around all the world's continents, which served to hold in all the world's oceans, as flat earthers claim water must have a container. It also extends the entire southern hemisphere into a larger and larger area, where on the globe, everything south of the equator gets closer and closer together. This made being at the southern tip of South America and in Antarctica the perfect place to test flat Earth claims and also confirm the globe predictions. Every single flat Earth claim failed. Every flat Earth prediction was demonstrably false. The final experiments are meant to be taken collectively, just like evidence in a court of law. Undoubtedly, flat earthers will attempt to discredit individual experiments we did while at the same time ignoring the rest. If they cannot provide an accurate map of the world and a working model that can account for the results of all of these final experiments collectively, that is because we do not live on a flat Earth. If they try to say these experiments are not actual experiments, but only observations, that is because they cannot reconcile our findings with a flat Earth. If they say that flat Earth does not make predictions, that is because making accurate and testable predictions based on a flat Earth is impossible, because a flat Earth does not exist. You cannot make and test predictions based on something that is not real. Maps of the globe exist because the globe exists. The entire globe model exists because the globe exists. Countless globe predictions come true every single day, and countless future globe predictions will continue to happen exactly as predicted because the globe exists. If a flat earther tells you that there is no accurate flat Earth map and there is no working flat Earth model and that they don't make predictions, that is an implicit admission that a flat Earth does not exist. Because you can map things that exist, you can model things that exist, and you can make very specific predictions that come true based on something that actually exists and is testable. I created the final experiment to give both sides, flat Earth and globe, an equal opportunity to prove their side. Only the globe side returned with evidence supporting their position. The globe side returned with tons of concrete evidence that both accurately matches the globe model and also falsifies flat Earth. This brings us to southern hemisphere flights, specifically nonstop airplane flights that originate and terminate in the southern hemisphere without crossing the equator. Flat earthers said for years that southern hemisphere flights did not exist. They either said the flights were simply fake or would be canceled if you actually purchased a ticket for one of them, or if the plane actually took off, it would be rerouted through the northern hemisphere. Here, flat earthers make these claims, starting with Flat Earth Dave saying this as recent as last month.
So this is the flight from, if the Earth is a globe, this is the flight from New Zealand, right? Australia's over here to Argentina. And FlightAware says this is the shortest route, but that's not how it goes, right? The flight actually goes all the way up across the equator to San Francisco, all the way across to Houston, Texas, and then it goes all the way down. That's the flight route. When you look at it on a flat Earth map, you got New Zealand, San Francisco, Houston, Texas, and Argentina. It's a straight line.
The commercial air travel routes for the southern hemisphere are wrong. This is an easy thing you can check out in 60 seconds. Take a map reading of the distance between anywhere near Australia and anywhere in South America. It's a straight shot across the South Pacific. Now find your favorite travel site and try to get there non-stop. See what happens. The routes start turning ridiculous. I used to business travel for years, and I've never seen anything like it. It's the one thing in the general public world they can't hide, the actual distance between these two places. On a round world, the flight is easy, just a straight shot across an ocean. But on a flat world, it becomes the greatest distance between 2 points. There are no shortcuts, so they distract you with multiple connections and layovers.
And every time flat earthers have attempted to book the non-stop flight, it fails to go through, gets cancelled and refunded days before departure, or changes to a non-direct flight.
Now, one particular flight has had the spotlight for years in the flat versus globe debate, and that's the nonstop flight between Santiago, Chile, and Sydney, Australia. This particular flight has a very crucial connection to TFE, but more importantly, flat earthers have made the bold claim that this flight does not exist, that this flight has never been proven, and that this flight would prove the Earth is a globe.
You know, a great way to prove that the Earth is not a ball, or the Earth is a ball, is to take a trip from the tip of Africa, or better yet, South America, to Australia or New Zealand, and see if it takes 12 hours or the amount of time it should take if the Earth was a ball, because there are no shortcuts on a flat Earth.
If Earth was a ball, there are several flights in the southern hemisphere which would have their quickest, straightest path over the Antarctic continent, such as Santiago, Chile, to Sydney, Australia. Instead of taking the shortest, quickest route in a straight line over Antarctica, all such flights detour all manner of directions away from Antarctica, instead claiming the temperature's too cold for airplane travel. Considering the fact that there are plenty of flights to, from, and over Antarctica, and NASA claims to have technology keeping them in conditions both far colder and far hotter than any experienced on Earth, such an excuse is clearly just an excuse, and these flights aren't made because they are impossible.
The first part of the clue is the utter lack of non-stop flights from anywhere in this hemisphere, which is why I gave you multiple cities in each group. And here's the plot hole for you. Flying from international cities like Sydney, Rio, Santiago, or anywhere else close by, you can't get a single non-stop flight, no matter how much money you pay. I tried to do this for an entire night, and it was like playing an online casino game, one that I was losing most of the time.
Some globe debaters will acknowledge this fact, but rebut with the claim that non-stop Sydney to Santiago flights follow a great circle route over the Pacific, remaining in the southern hemisphere the entire time, therefore increasing the necessary flight distance, speed, and duration. With regards to this claim, firstly, it has yet to be proven that these flights even exist, since no unedited video footage exists online, and every time flat earthers have attempted to book the non-stop flight, it fails to go through, gets cancelled and refunded days before departure, or changes to a non-direct flight. Secondly, if they do exist, it is yet to be proven that these flights follow such a path, because again, there is no unedited video footage, flight trackers cut out over the oceans, and it is highly unlikely, considering 99% of other long-haul Southern Hemisphere flights take radical northern detours.
So this was just another baseless claim from flat earthers. In fact, one of my early ideas for the final experiment was to take a flat earther on a nonstop Southern Hemisphere flight between Santiago, Chile and Sydney, Australia. This is something Flat Earth Dave had already publicly stated he was willing to participate in.
All right, then how's this one for you? If
Hold
I
on a second,
were,
John.
just give
John.
me a sec, Dirth. If I were to book the flight, for argument's sake, okay, just hear me out. If I was to book this flight and fly from Sydney to Chile, and I stayed awake the whole time, and as far as I could tell, there was no refueling, and we did it in the allotted 14 hours, whatever it was, if I were to do that, would that put a dent in the flat Earth model, hypothetically?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it would.
It would. It would change. It would add a lot of questions for sure, if not crush the flat Earth model. But you would have to be on a normal plane, which is pretty easy to identify. You could tell that you're flying at on a normal speed, and it would be impossible on a flat Earth if that's the case. So let's do it.
But then someone named Max Egan came along and took this exact flight and even live streamed boarding the flight and filmed a traditional compass on his tray table during part of his flight. The flat Earth community had to quickly pivot, as they previously said these flights did not exist and that they would be impossible on a flat Earth. And so they decided to latch on to the compass readings and argued that this Southern Hemisphere flight actually flew in a northerly direction, taking a wildly different route than would be taken on a globe.
Yeah, so Max Egan was back early on when Quanta they all of a sudden started having direct flights from Santiago to Sydney, or somewhere in Australia, Santiago to Sydney. And a lot of flat earthers said, we don't believe that flight exists. It doesn't work because it's impossible on a flat Earth in that amount of time. Well, that's assuming you know how fast the wind speeds are and how fast an airplane could go. This is so Max said he took compass readings, and he had compass readings of north, northwest, and then west, and then southwest, and then south. And he listed the times of them, and he goes, I thought I would be going more south and then southwest and on the globe.
Yeah.
So we took his readings. We drew a straight line from Sydney to South America.
Yeah.
And then we put his readings on there, and it's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened.
This knee-jerk reaction from flat earthers was highly problematic for multiple reasons. Ignoring that compasses do not work well inside a metal aircraft, and especially on a tray table that contains metal, they also completely forgot about magnetic declination corrections, which would be crucial so far south. Even worse, though, is the fact that this flight does not depart in a northerly direction and never crosses North America as they implied in their videos. The flight actually departs south toward Antarctica, and Antarctica can even be occasionally seen out the window, and then the flight travels south of New Zealand before landing in Sydney, Australia. Their next attempt at trying to reconcile this flight with a flat Earth was to claim that this flight used very fast jet streams to travel such a far distance in a short period of time.
The time, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense on a flat Earth. But then we found out that at the heights that it flies, there's like 200 to 300 mile an hour winds.
Jet streams, yeah.
That jet streams. And so if the plane just went 650 miles an hour with a 200 miles an hour tailwind, the signs make perfect sense.
But this also doesn't work, as jet streams only travel from west to east, and that is due to the Earth's west to east rotation. There are no 200 to 300 mile per hour jet streams when traveling from Santiago to Sydney, which is the opposite direction from east to west. And so when flat earthers talk about Southern Hemisphere flights, they routinely talk about the Sydney to Santiago flight, which is from west to east. And they invoke jet streams, hoping you will forget about the return flight from Santiago to Sydney, which is east to west without jet streams.
So this is the truth about the jet streams, and this is when New School had this projection there. We were able to save, and look at here, 62 south, wind of 370 kilometers per hour. That's about 200 plus miles per hour added to the speed of the plane. So whether this plane from Sydney is coming from this jet stream or this jet stream, doesn't matter. What matters is that they are gaining speed about 300 to 400 miles per hour on top of the speed of the aircraft.
I won't bore you with the math and technical analysis. If you want that, go check out Ruhif's channel on YouTube. But the jet streams aren't fast enough even for the west to east flight, Sydney to Santiago. More importantly here, the jet streams are not even present from Santiago to Sydney. And again, this is due to the Earth's west to east rotation, which creates west to east jet streams. Now that you know this, watch videos from flat earthers carefully, and you'll notice they correctly show the direction of the jet streams, but then fail to talk about the flight from Santiago to Sydney, which is going in the opposite direction of the jet streams. You can clearly see the impact of these jet streams and lack thereof on the return flight when you look at the significant difference in the average flight time from Sydney to Santiago compared to the average flight time from Santiago to Sydney. Traveling west to east with the jet streams has an average flight time of just under 12 hours. And traveling east to west is over 13 and a half hours and frequently exceeds 14 hours. That consistent 1.5 to 2 hours of extra flight time is because when flying east to west, they are all flying into and against the jet streams. Since flat earthers cannot appeal to jet streams in both directions, as a last-ditch effort, they make the claim that the east to west Santiago to Sydney flight uses trade winds to increase the speed of the plane. But this utterly fails, as trade winds are very slow comparatively, only occasionally reaching just 30 plus miles per hour. YouTuber Critical Think, who joined us for the final experiment, lives in Australia and took both the nonstop Qantas flight from Sydney to Santiago on his way to Antarctica and also the nonstop flight from Santiago to Sydney on his way home. And many flat earthers to this day still think that Southern Hemisphere flights are fake. This is due in part to the fact that flat earthers like Flat Earth Dave and Eric Dubé do not apologize when they are wrong. They do not remove their YouTube videos when the information they gave has been shown to be factually incorrect. And so people still watch their content today that states false information, such as these flights have not been proven and therefore probably don't exist. One flat earther, Steve from England, who did an interview with me on the TFE channel, offered Critical Think $500 if he could prove that he got on a plane in Santiago, Chile, and arrived in Sydney, Australia just 14 hours later.
And I've been watching a live stream of Critical Think from Punta Arenas as he gets ready to catch his plane. Short trip to Santiago Airport. From there, he is claiming that he's going to be flying direct to Sydney. So I messaged him, commented on his YouTube, and I said to him, listen, mate, if you can get yourself from Santiago to Sydney direct, non-stop, and you can prove that you've done it, I'll pay $500.
That is quite the confidence from Steve, putting $500 on the line that this flight was not real or would not happen in the stated time of approximately 14 hours. His confidence comes from the fact that this flight is physically impossible on a flat Earth and it perfectly matches the globe. So Critical Think live streamed himself boarding the flight in Santiago.
D08 QF28 1310. I've been asked to show my boarding pass. So there it is. Right flight, right date.
Now, flat earthers have a long-standing reputation for not paying up when they lose a bet. But I must give credit where credit is due, and Steve from England paid $500 to Critical Think as he proved he was on this flight and landed in less than 14 hours and immediately live streamed from Sydney after landing.
Right, I'm in Sydney and I just need to live stream the disembarking. So there's a time marker for about a 13.5 hour flight from Santiago.
We can now add the nonstop Santiago to Sydney flight to the growing list of failed flat Earth predictions. They predicted there would be no 24-hour sun in Antarctica.
But there is no midnight sun in Antarctica.
And no 24-hour moon.
Right? You know, there's a 24-hour moon in the north, but not a 24-hour moon in the south.
And no South Pole.
No one's at the South Pole because there is no South Pole.
And no South Celestial Pole.
In the southern outer hemisphere, people say that the stars rotate in the opposite direction. They make circles in the opposite direction, and that can only happen on a ball Earth. I have yet to see any real proof of this.
And now, no nonstop Southern Hemisphere flights between South America and Australia. This will be a common theme in this series, where flat earthers make predictions based on a flat Earth, and these predictions fail every time. And let's not forget, this is the purpose of science. Science is basically about making predictions based on your hypothesis and then testing your predictions in an attempt to validate your hypothesis. Their predictions continually fail because the hypothesis itself is false. A flat Earth does not exist. Remember, when a flat earther tells you that they no longer make predictions, this is an implicit admission that they know flat Earth predictions, specifically predictions that are contrary to the globe predictions, will never come to pass. Every time the globe's prediction is contrary to the flat Earth's prediction, the globe's prediction is what happens every single time. Another theme in the Final Experiments series is the symmetry found in reality that matches the symmetry predicted by a spherical Earth. Specifically, a symmetry between the northern and southern hemispheres. A symmetry that would just be impossible on a flat Earth. When you pick two nonstop flights, one from the northern hemisphere and one from the southern hemisphere, that are approximately the same distance on the globe, you will find that the flight times are about the same, as is the distance traveled. You never find what would be required on a flat Earth map. Take the nonstop flight from Los Angeles, California to Istanbul, Turkey, and compare it to the flight between Sydney and Santiago. Look at the incredible symmetry on the globe between these destinations in the northern hemisphere and those in the southern hemisphere. So the globe would predict that these flight times would be about the same, and that these actual flights fly northerly over the top of the globe in the northern hemisphere, and southerly over the bottom of the globe in the southern hemisphere. And that's exactly what happens. The average flight time from LAX to Istanbul is 12 hours and 20 minutes. And the average flight time from Sydney to Santiago is 12 hours. And the average flight time of the return flight from Istanbul to LAX is 13 hours and 8 minutes. And the return flight from Santiago to Sydney averages 13 hours and 39 minutes. Again, with both of these flights, the west to east leg is shorter as they use the jet streams which only go from west to east due to the Earth's rotation. So we not only confirm the globe's symmetry in comparing northern and southern hemisphere flights, but we also see the effects of the Earth's rotation as well. One of the beautiful things about flights is that there are over 100,000 commercial flights every single day, and they are available to practically anyone. This means we have practically an unlimited data set to work with. And if any flat earther has doubts, they can just buy a ticket on a particular flight and look out the window. I'm going to briefly mention another Southern Hemisphere flight that I will cover in more depth in a future video. Back in October of 2021, 107 Australians were in Argentina, and due to the pandemic, needed to be brought back to Australia.
Australians stranded across the South American continent are scrambling to get to Argentina's capital for their chance to catch a flight back home.
So the Australian government worked with Qantas to create a repatriation flight from Buenos Aires, Argentina to Australia. On a flat Earth, the shortest route by far would be to head almost directly over the North Pole. And this is such a long flight, you would need to carefully fly the path of the shortest distance. But this flight headed south toward Antarctica. They actually flew over Antarctica, and the pilots filmed the beautiful Antarctic scenery out the cockpit window. So flat earthers will need to employ some sort of rescue device, as this flight flew south instead of the north direction, which would be required on a flat Earth. So flat earthers will be forced to make this flight fly east from Argentina to Australia. There's just one problem, one massive, irreconcilable problem.
The route home travelled involved a fly over the South Pole, giving passengers a spectacular view of Antarctica below.
If we plot this flight on a flat Earth map, it actually went west against the jet streams. And the total flight time was 17 and a half hours. There is no math whatsoever that can make this flight work on a flat Earth. This one-off repatriation flight was only possible on the globe. Southern Hemisphere flights confirm the globe, and they are physically impossible on a flat Earth. I'd like to thank Critical Think again for participating in the final experiment and for joining us from Australia. Please use the link in the description below to head over to his channel and check out his great content. He will be featured in a future video in the final experiments series on weight variation confirming Earth's gravity. After this video, please enjoy a time lapse of his nonstop flight from Santiago to Sydney. And please check out our other experiments, which are part of these final experiments, where you will see results that confirm the globe and results that would be impossible on a flat Earth. And please share this video with anyone you know who is a flat earther or considering flat Earth. As Jesus said in John 8:32, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.